Welcome to D-SETI. We are going to talk about missing time, hypnosis, false memory, and dream work. This is a really important topic, and I think it's actually the most important topic perhaps of this century or millennium, because it actually deals with how we are relating to these extraordinary experiences and how we can integrate them into our daily lives and science. So if people are having contact with extraterrestrial beings and they're not remembering it, and the only way to remember it is through hypnosis, then we need to figure something out. I don't think that's actually the model, but let's actually parse that out a little bit together. So ET contact, non-human intelligence, missing time, involves sometimes strange gaps of continuity of time. It's sort of like blacking out or stepping into a dream. So people sometimes might see a UFO and then all of a sudden they realize they're in a different place, a different time. 6 hours have passed, their family's been looking for them, and all they remember are these really strange stories of dealing with energy beings who took them perhaps to another location, and they don't remember much after that sort of thing. So there's a spectrum of memory. That there's sometimes screen memories in place. That means something that's clearly a dreamlike experience that's standing in place. There's sometimes marks on the body after these things. There's a lot of stuff that happens, and that it generally involves some sense of stepping out of normal waking consciousness into a different phase of consciousness and then coming back. And so that whole journey of going from one phase to another phase of consciousness and back is described as the missing time experience. Just as a spoiler alert, the only other time we experience such things are dreams. And so that's one of the things we'll be talking about. These are generally understood, these episodes of missing time are generally understood to be repressed memories or else tampered with by aliens who are controlling the mind, or men in black, or something like that. So we go, there's got to be a reason we don't remember. It's because there was a traumatic experience and it's repressed, or the aliens are controlling the mind. I'm here to say no, that's actually not the case, because the only precedent we have for something like this is actually our relationship with dreams. And if we honor dreams like 90% of the other cultures on this planet that are called polyphasic, as opposed to the monophasic sort of singular honoring of the waking consciousness, if we knew how to navigate those phases, we'd know how to remember and navigate this shift of consciousness associated with interactions with non-human intelligences. So we often work with missing time in our culture as a means of knowledge regarding ETs or UFOs, and we usually do that through hypnosis. This is a problematic source of knowledge, especially historic testimony or evidence. I'm not saying that hypnosis or these experiences are less than real, but that we have more of a nuance associated with the stories we tell around them. So let me tell you the story of missing time and hypnosis as best as I can understand it. So in 1966, John Fuller published the book The Interrupted Journey, which was about Dr. Simon's hypnosis of the Betty and Barney Hill couple. This is one of the most famous cases of abduction, and it established the hypothesis that hypnosis is memory enhancement. And so it's really important to know, right? So Betty and Barney Hill, they have a missing time episode. They relate to a psychiatrist, Dr. Simon, who goes, okay, we can use hypnosis. At the same time, he was using truth serums, aka like really powerful drugs on war victims and veterans to help them, right? He was hyper drugging. He was drugging his patients with truth serums and used that technique. It's like that was one of his techniques. The other technique was this highly aggressive form of hypnosis that was very controlling and really establishes a lot of our tropes about bad hypnosis. This comes from a traumatized war doctor who used traumatizing methods on war victims, and he applies it to Betty and Barney Hill, and lo and behold, we have problematic understanding of what happens. But in 1981, an artist who was interested in this stuff goes, okay, missing time happens, right? So he publishes a book, Bud Hopkins publishes a book, Missing Time, which presents the hypothesis that ET contact is happening, abductions are happening, and it's based on hypnotic regressions that are based on Dr. Simon's work, basically. 1987, Whitley Strieber publishes Communion, and he worked with Hopkins, and so there's this really clear lineage of poorly performed hypnosis by like people who really shouldn't be doing it, and establishing this huge understanding, this huge cultural narratives around what abductions are, right? When you look to actually how many people were studied and who were doing the hypnosis, it is problematic. There's only about 10 people that established a notion of abduction, and about 260 published cases. Like, this is an issue, actually. It's so small, but it goes so big. We all know Whitley Strieber and the notions of anal probes and little grays doing strange things. And so that's really where it comes from. In 1994, Dr. John Mack publishes the book Abduction, Human Encounters with Aliens, which establishes the abduction phenomena as both legitimate and non-clinical. So this is really important to note. He was influenced by this stream of hypnosis, but actually had a lot more academic grounding. He was actually a psychiatrist, so he understood some of the dynamics. I would look to his work over Hopkins, over David Jacobs, over any other hypnotist who wasn't trained in this matter. Dr. Leo Sprinkle, on the other hand, he was a doctor of psychology, so he's a good guy as well. But John Mack says, hey, these things aren't psychopathology. It's not a clinical thing that's happening, and it's legitimately happening. And then in 1998, Dolores Cannon published the book Custodians Beyond Abduction, which redefined the field of hypnosis in service to experiencers, and it shifted the focus from historic testimony, trying to figure out objectively what happened, to actually healing. That's where quantum healing becomes quantum healing hypnosis technique. I'm trained in Beyond Quantum Healing. That is a modality that comes from one of Dolores' students. So it's really important to note that hypnosis is problematic. There are many reasons why it's problematic as a historic source of knowledge, right? So hypnotic regressions have been shown to lead to false memories. The study parts, the scientists really mislead people. They use leading questions, or they go, and maybe we can see if we can implant false memories, right? So that shows it's problematic. I don't think that's actually what's happening with most hypnotists. They're sort of believe something and kind of let the cart get before the horse or whatever. So it's not actually malicious, but it is something to be mindful of. It is actually impossible to avoid non-leading questions because most communication is nonverbal anyways. So most people have the criticism, well, in hypnosis, there's leading questions. Leading questions are like, did the alien abduct you, right? You say yes or no. You actually are dealing with a demand characteristic or a demand kind of issue here where the hypnotist has a position of power. It says, did the abduction happen? You can feel they want the yes from there. So we work with non-leading questions as best we can, but I say it's impossible to avoid them. And it's okay because we're not actually generating historic testimony. We're actually doing something like Dreamwork. But the final criticism here is that we don't even know if missing time happens in historic space-time. So how can we even know if there are memories that can be enhanced or recovered? We don't actually know. So that's another issue. It's really important to note that hypnotic regression is only one hypothesis of many as to what's happening with hypnosis, right? So we're using the term regression as a sort of stand-in or fiction to establish the nature of the work, but we're not actually dealing with memory at this point, it feels like. So hypnosis actually may be dream work. Right, so while the scientific literature is very inconclusive and probably damning of the notion of hypnosis as memory enhancement, there's general acceptance of the notion that hypnosis produces a physiological state similar to a nap or relaxation, and it produces a psychological state similar to daydreaming. So that's it, right? And we go, from one perspective, we might go, that's meaningless and useless because dreams are meaningless and useless. However, if we look to 90% of Earth's cultures that are polyphasic and honor dreaming, we go, oh my God, there's so much more. They lead to local knowledge systems. They mediate the human and non-human world. They lead to healing, insight, and transformation. They are psionic in nature. There's so much more reality in dreams than we attribute. So I say that hypnosis is actually dream work, and dream work is actually much, much more than we ever expected. So given that experiencers are working with hypnotists for more reasons than memory enhancement, right? I tell everyone I work with, hey, this is something like a dream. You won't get memories back. You might have it indirectly happen, but directly we're dealing with dreams. Nobody actually cares that the testimony isn't acceptable in an objective level. They actually need to deal with their experience in a meaningful way. And that meaningful way may actually be dream work. So what is D-SETI? D-SETI stands for the Dream Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence or the Dream Studies of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, depending on your perspective. ET contact is dreamlike, therefore D-SETI honors the reality of dreams by respecting you, the dreamer, as the final authority regarding the significance of the dream, which includes ontological. So if you work with me and you're saying, I don't know if that missing time experience was a dream, if it was real or if it was both, I go, great, you can figure that out yourself and let me know. And you also don't need to be bound to that interpretation forever. That's actually the other principle of dream work, is respect of the dreamer as the authority of interpretation and the respect of the dream as a multidimensional source of meaning. So D-SETI offers dream work sessions and educations through the work of me, Daniel Rekshan. I hold a master's in East-West psychology, certificate in hypnotherapy and depth hypnosis, a Beyond Quantum Healing certification, and I'm a PhD student in the Integral Noetic Science program at CIHS. It is really important to note that ET contact and dream work are triggering, taboo, and projection prone, so please be mindful as you continue your path of exploration. You can continue that path at dseti.org.